Have you ever looked up at the night sky, at the endless blackness, and wondered what is all this space made of? Science calls it vacuum, empty, cold, silent. But yogis have always said the opposite. Space is not empty. It is the most alive, the most potent, the most intelligent dimension of existence. Stay with me till the end of this video because once you understand why yogis treat space like a living presence, you'll never look at the sky or even the air around you in the same way again. In yogic science, space is called Akasha, not as a poetic metaphor, but as the fundamental womb of creation. Before fire blazed, before air stirred, before water flowed, before earth solidified, there was space. And in that space, everything slept. Not in absence, but in absolute potential. Yogis say that space is not passive. It listens, it responds, it rearranges itself according to the quality of what passes through it. To them, space is not the backdrop of the universe. It is the very intelligence that holds everything together. Sadhguru says something deeply unsettling and liberating at the same time. If you become utterly silent within yourself, Akasha becomes your friend. A friend, not a void. He explains that space is an emptiness. It is a living field of energy that records everything, remembers everything, transmits everything. According to him, the very reason thoughts, emotions, prayers, or intentions can travel across distances is because space itself participates. In simpler words, space is the ultimate medium. Everything happens through it, not in front of it. If space were truly empty, existence would collapse. The planets would have nowhere to float. Light would have no path to travel. Sound would have no room to vibrate. And consciousness would have no field to expand. Space is the stabilizing force that allows everything else to dance. Yogis say the universe is like a musical instrument. The elements are the strings, but space is the silent resonance underneath them. Without that silent resonance, no sound can ever form. When you understand this, you see why yogis revere stillness so deeply. Silence isn't the absence of sound, it is the presence of space. Ancient yogis often said, space remembers. This idea sounds mystical, but today science calls it the information field. The universe, they say, is not matter based but information based. Yogis arrived at this thousands of years ago, not by measurement but by perception. According to yogic science, every action, emotion, and thought leaves a subtle imprint in space. This is why certain places hold certain feelings. A battlefield feels heavy, a temple feels light, a childhood room feels familiar. Space is not dead. It absorbs, it reflects, it responds. Most people think space is empty simply because nothing is happening there. But yogis say the greatest activity happens when nothing seems to be occurring. Space is where atoms form, where energy shifts, where galaxies birth and dissolve. When you sit in deep meditation, when breath slows, when the mind stops churning, you are not entering emptiness. You are slipping into the intelligence of space. And in that state, you can sense something extraordinary. Space has texture. Space has presence. Space has a pulse. You begin to feel held as if the entire cosmos is breathing with you. Modern physics accidentally touches this ancient truth. zero-point energy, quantum fluctuations, dark energy, the fabric of space-time vibrating with unimaginable potency. Science sees movement in nothingness, a faint trace of what yogis perceive directly. When Sadhguru says space is more powerful than any object in space, he is pointing to the same truth. Matter is just a temporary arrangement. Space is the eternal force that permits the arrangement. Yogis didn't see space as empty, they saw it as the canvas of divine intelligence. This might seem unrelated, but it's actually the most practical expression of this knowledge. Yogis align themselves with the earth's magnetic field not for superstition, but because space behaves differently depending on direction. The geometry of the universe is not uniform. Space curves, bends, twists, expands, and your body responds to these subtle flows. When a yogi sits in meditation, he is not just sitting in a room, he is positioning himself in a vast field of living space. The quality of that space determines the quality of his inner experience. We are not solid beings. Most of the body is space between atoms, between breaths, between heartbeats. What you call you is actually a delicate scaffolding floating inside an ocean of Akasha. When a person becomes aware of this inner space, fear dissolves, attachment loosens. The boundaries between me and not me start to blur. Because the more space you feel within yourself, the less you feel imprisoned by your own body or mind. This is the beginning of liberation. If a space is alive, if space remembers, if space responds, then you are never truly alone, never truly separate, never truly disconnected. Every breath you take is a dialogue with the universe. Every thought you release ripples through the cosmos. Every moment of silence awakens a deeper intelligence holding your very existence. You are not living inside space. Space is living through you. Maybe this is why yogis walk through life with such grace. They don't fight creation, they float within it. When space is your companion, not your emptiness, life becomes a dance, not a struggle. What looks like nothingness to the eye is everything to the inner seeker. If this video helped you see space as a living force instead of a silent void, share it with someone who thinks the universe is just matter and mechanics. There is a whole intelligence hidden in the space around you, waiting to be felt. Subscribe for more deep dives into mystic musings, yogic science, and the unseen dimensions that shape human existence. Until next time, stay conscious, stay curious, and stay open to the vastness within.